All right, here we are at the beginning of the garden after the heat wave and the flood. These plants here, they're doing gloriously. These are volunteers. They are, I believe, from China, this plant. It is non-indigenous, invasive, and it goes by a variety of names. It does have one nice name, the tree of heaven. It's also called the tree of hell and the stink tree. So I'm pretty sure I don't want it to get very big. I'm letting it do a little bit of healing to the soil. And then I'm going to come through today and clip all of this out. My alyssum has bloomed back nicely. This is the second round this year. It all came up from seed from the flowers that came up in the spring. This is the only pot that ended up doing anything with the extreme weather that we had all summer. This was from a previous year. I just kind of let that die out. But you can see nothing came up in this pot. Those are weeds. My husband did have some onions come up in this pot. That one had a ton initially of the clover, as did this one. You see there's still a little bit left there, but they just couldn't survive the heat. These bulb plants, on the other hand, never got enough sun to even put out flowers. So these are the same bulbs that should have gone in May and bloomed, have never bloomed. Really odd lighting conditions in this garden. So it's going to be changed quite heavily next year. This year was really just about healing the soil though. You can see here where my cat has scratched it away. This is really low quality soil. So right now I'm just trying to heal the soil. This was primarily filler dirt, which has absolutely no life in it at all. It's what they use for construction. And so the fact that we have all of these plants in it, though so few of the ones I actually planted, the seeds I actually planted did not even come up. Or if they did, like my poppies, they put out one blossom and then died. The soil is rough. So you can see the mallows do pretty well in it. Now that the heat wave is gone, several of them died during the heat wave, but they've come back. My tomato plant was a heirloom tomato that we didn't eat and it got nasty, so we just threw it out here in the garden for the seeds. So you can see where a multitude of plants came up from that tomato. It put out one flower before the heat wave and then stopped. It didn't die, but it hasn't put out another flower since. Here again, you see where my clovers are trying to come up, but the sun hits this area and just bakes it so hard that it does not go well for most plants. Here you can see where some of the clovers that we put in did manage to last through the heat wave. This is a common mallow, not a cultivated mallow, and it did well. And this whole area back here was hard baked soil. You can see there in the middle, those 3-4 patches there show what the whole yard looked like. So even though most of my clover died during the heat wave, the garden area in the back is going to be much improved. Here is where the worst soil in the whole yard was. This was awful. I don't even know what it was. It wasn't even just filler dirt. You can see it's just nasty soil. And so that's why these sunflowers did so rough. They're actually supposed to be mammoth, not a normal height. And then when the rains came and they got watered, they started leaning. They tried to put out blossoms, but they just can't do it. There's not enough nutrients in the soil. This one sunflower here managed to put off 3 blossoms. You can see the pot marigolds are doing pretty well throughout all of it. And before the heat wave, the bachelor's buttons were glorious, but most of those died out. I'm gonna come through today, clear up all the dead plants so that it can look nice again, because as you see, there's greenery everywhere. Gotta come through and get out these tree saplings, these Siberian elms, again, not indigenous, they're invasive. It's that big tree there. I mean, it's nice for shade and looks all green, but the branches break easily. It's very comparable to a cottonwood, though they're not related. The seed pods that come off of the Siberian elm are supposed to be quite a bit tastier though. So we're gonna try to gather as many of them as we can, not only to eat, but because we don't want to have to pull up thousands and thousands of little baby saplings like we did all year here. So this is where I'll show you the damage from the flood. This is all the damage from the heat wave, right? As you see, it just pulls right out of the ground. So they were just severely damaged by the heat wave, pull right out. Down here, you can see where our little pond was. This is completely full of water during the rain from Hurricane Hillary here in Utah. Of course, we didn't get it the way California and Oregon did, but it flooded. And it was, you can just barely see it. Most of it has fallen off, but it had gone all the way up my door. This is a weird, probably silicate is my guess for the ingredients in it. It's something my landlady got for us to block it because our house has already flooded now twice with the crazy water. And all of this is just coming from the upper area here. None of this was down here. This is just all from the flood. It washed away an entire little section of my garden here, where you see the gutter is and all of that, the drain. This area was the only area that was able to put in enough flowers to actually hold on to the mulch, because this gets almost no sun throughout the entire summer. These few that managed to stay alive even had their roots exposed. You can see it right here. Legs on it a little bit. Let's see. Right here, this is the root that was exposed. I expected these plants to die, but they're hardy. They toughed it out and they're still there. Next year I'm going to put in almost complete shade plants. That's what needs to be right here, so that I can actually get some plants to hold on to the soil in case there is a little bit more rain next year. This was obviously abnormal rain, a hurricane hitting California for the first time in 84 years. And the water that came here was nothing to that, but it did do some damage. And now we've got to clean it up, right? So you can see all of that. Just some wild stuff going on there. All right, and then here in the back, this is where actually the most damage took place. You can hardly see it now with the rains having come. Let's see if I can find an area of it. This was all clover. You see where all that dead material is? This whole yard was still, yes, covered in the mallow. And this that's called knotweed, K-N-O-T, knotweed. But it was actually about 90% clover covering the ground as well. And now it's almost exclusively weeds again. We have these volunteer amaranth, a lot of nice volunteer amaranth throughout the garden. And my borage and my 4 o'clocks, which were not the plants I ordered. I don't recommend ordering specialty seeds from Amazon, because these were supposed to be cranesbill geraniums, and these were supposed to be a native Utah red hummingbird vine that was a little bit rare. And I got 4 o'clocks and borage. The only cranesbill geranium that I got is right here. Out of an entire pack of seeds, there was actually one geranium in the entire thing. Kind of funny. This is where the clover did the best. This little patch through here has the most shade with still a good amount of sun. And it's hard to tell. It didn't go as fast as it should have. But there are 4 different kinds of clover in here. There's this kind of red clover. There's your traditional so-called red clover that has the purple coloring, at least in my opinion, but smaller, like the little white ones. The white is also supposed to be here, and there should also be a greenish yellow clover. And they're all here, but I don't know that they're going to flower, right? However, next year, since the ground is no longer primarily this hard packed stuff, as you see, the weeds can't even get into this. This is what the entire yard was. Weeds could barely get into it. There were a few smatterings of weeds and nothing more, and they were really nasty weeds. This stuff, especially before the heat wave, you could take your shoes off and walk through it. It wasn't as nice as grass, of course, but it didn't feel bad. And neither does the mallow. So this is a much, much improved weed content. This weed content is going to help heal the soil. And hopefully next year, when I have the ability to work at the proper times. Just moving into this place this year, we had to get everything ready. So as soon as the snow was gone, we were out here working on it, but we couldn't get any of the seed down until about mid-May. And then that's when this wonderfully annoying tree put off probably millions of paper seeds. And I was still trying to get the clover to grow, so I was watering it still too much. So it was just a problem this year. But that's kind of to be expected when you're trying to bring back the life to soil. As you see, I had some flowers over here. They started to bloom just as the heat wave hit, and almost all of them died. But we still have one little petunia. And all of these wonderful edging plants should probably come back next year. I think my borage will go to seed enough that some of it will come back. And the flora clocks are actually semi-invasive or even hugely invasive, so they will definitely come back. And you can see where some of the clover did manage to go to flower. And this soil is actually quite a bit better. So when the flowers from that other yard crept over, they really did a lot better over here. They were able to get bigger leaves, brighter colors to their flowers, because this soil over here, while it was that hard, packed, nasty junk that you can still see some of, it is still better soil than the filler dirt. And so we did have more success over here until the heat wave wiped us out. And so that is where we will begin next year, coming in and getting this yard more and more useful for our purposes. I'm going to put about 5 different kinds of clover in it to try to drown out these weeds. The weeds that are here, while they're a pain, they're a lot better than goat heads and thistles and all kinds of nasty, thorny type of plants. So it's already drastically improved, even though it's still such a mess. And next year, I'll add some new heirloom grass to this one patch that is actual grass. You can see where the weeds are trying to invade because it hasn't been seeded or maintained. It's trying to die out. So I'm gonna put in about 3 or 4 different kinds of heirloom grass. It's a mix I found I really like. This was where I tried to have some zinnias and marigolds, but it's just really rough conditions. It's either baking in the sun or drowning in the shade. I have to find just the right plants to put in next year. Do a lot of research, give me a lot to do over the winter. As you see here, this is another area. I had this all cleaned up. This had almost no weeds in it, but it just got so hot that I couldn't spend much time in. The weeds are starting to take it over again. So that's why I decided to put clover in it instead of leaving it as the edging plants. And you can see the clover mixed with the weeds, of course. But it did survive over here as well. A little bit more favorable sun conditions. They do get sun, but not the just the baking sun, and they do get some shade as well. So it didn't do too badly over here. A lot better than it was when we got here. And so this is the travel that you might expect from healing your soil. If, like me, you come to a place that does not already have just this great set of gardening soil and a nice lawn, which I'm not a big fan of, that's why I'm going with clover. These are the kinds of setbacks that you'll need to expect. The heat waves really aren't going away. They've been basically increasing every year since about 2002. So we have to figure out how to do what we want to do to the best that we can with the conditions that now prevail. And so this is what I've dealt with in trying to heal this area that was in such bad shape. Thank you all. We'll come back after we get it a little more cleaned up.